To overstate the significance. As you can see, it's difficult to overstate the significance that social media plays in all of our lives these days. There are currently, I think, 67 million monthly active Twitter users in the United States alone, while the total Facebook audience in the US, which includes, I'm sure, the vast majority of people in this room, amounts to 156 million users. Some of us cannot get through the day without checking our various devices, our various accounts, our various memberships. I'm an addict myself, as my wife will testify. Our panelists are going to talk about what role social media can play, apart from the obvious ones of sharing cat pictures and wedding photos and texting funny stories and memes. What more substantive a role, dare I say, can social media play in terms of achieving social justice, in terms of positively mobilizing campaigns for justice, connecting people from different walks of life who might otherwise allow them to speak? Social media now allows them to post. So the format, and personally I also hope we get a chance to talk about some of the negatives. We were having a chat beforehand about what we're going to cover. We'd like to also talk about some of the downsides of social media when it comes to trying to campaign and connect and build communities, because there's the trolling, there's the abuse, there's the Islamophobia, there's the bullying. In fact, here's a good factoid for you. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but your new First Lady in Waiting, Melania Trump, says she wants to make her mission in the White House to get rid of online bullying, which, given her husband accounts for about 70% of online bullying, should be fairly straightforward a campaign to achieve. She just has to switch off his phone at 3 a.m. and that will radically reduce online bullying. I mean, the president-elect was tweeting at protesters 2 nights ago. I don't know if you saw, having a go at them. So, format-wise, they're going to speak for a few minutes each. Then we're going to have a little bit of a chat, and then we're going to open up to all of you guys to give us your opinions, questions, criticisms. Our panelists today need no introduction, but I'll do it anyway. Zahra Billoo, Executive Director of CARE San Francisco Bay Area, represents victims of discrimination, advocates for policy changes, civil rights. Zahra's efforts have been highlighted in local and national media, KTVU, MSNBC, the Christian Science Monitor, NPR. She's a 2014 recipient of the National Lawyers Guild, SF, Bay Area Chapter's Unsung Hero Award. No, wait, I'm doing it again. Unsung Hero. Hazem Bata is currently serving as Secretary General of Islamic Society of North America, ISNA.
That's good, yeah.
No, he's a lawyer, he's an activist, he's a former banker. Come on, we gotta get the whole CV in. There you go.
I work for a bank.
That counts. You work for a bank, you're a banker. Ladies and gentlemen, those are your panelists. Give them a round of applause. There you go first.
Assalamu alaikum. Again, it's so nice to be with you, and it looks like the crowd has actually grown later in the afternoon. I was surprised that we started on time this morning. I really was, but I can see that this is a larger crowd. As Mehdi said, we wanted to keep our comments brief and then really hear from all of you. But I thought I'd talk about a few things. One is, many of you are not even aware of the newest tools. I haven't figured out how to use Snapchat except to log in and stalk my 2-year-old niece. Like, that's all I know how to do on Snapchat. And I raise that to say that the tools are changing constantly. A Snapchat filter was a really big deal to have at a big community event about 6 months ago. Today, if you have a birthday party without a Snapchat filter, like, you're doing it wrong. Like, you did not adequately plan this birthday party. So the tools are hard to keep up with, right? Facebook is almost a thing of the past. I'm told it's now what old people use. That's what the kids younger than me say. So when I talk to people about doing social media, I don't think that you need to be on all platforms at all times. I think you pick one, maybe two, and you specialize in them, because it becomes really difficult to manage many, many platforms. And why is it important to use it? Mehdi asked us to tell stories, and so the one that really stands out for me is what happened last year in North Carolina with the 3 young Muslims who were killed in their apartment, execution style. You may realize that it happened late at night, and one of the first concerns that the community raised was, why isn't the media picking this up? If the killer had been Muslim and the victims hadn't been, would the media have picked it up faster? Why isn't it in the local news? Why isn't it in the national news? 20 years ago, you really had to know someone at one of these major legacy institutions to get coverage. Social media has changed that dramatically. What happened was, family, friends, community members, and activists took to Twitter and started to ask the media on Twitter, why aren't you covering this? They were tagging and flooding the various social media accounts of numerous public officials within the media, and it worked. Come the next morning, it was wall-to-wall coverage. Could it have been better? Could it have been faster? Could it have lasted longer? Absolutely. But did it make a difference? Yes. And so today's quickly developing tools give all of you an opportunity to have direct contact. I mentioned the late Omar Ahmed, who was a mayor of a city in the Bay Area, passed away a few years ago in an earlier talk. He did a really great TED talk a few years ago about how if you wanted to get your elected officials' attention, you should write them a handwritten letter. I think he said like once a week or at least once a month. Honestly, today, if you want to get an elected official's attention, if you send them enough tweets, they will reply to you, or they will block you, but they will see what you are saying. And so it's such an impactful way to reach people. So what do? You pick a few out, you pick one or two platforms, you do them really well. You take what you put out seriously, and this is the lawyer in me that says, a lot of times us, community members, activists, and passionate individuals, we don't do it seriously. We do it at 3 a.m., we do it when we're really upset. But what you put out on social media is forever, right? It doesn't go away. And I think that sometimes we think, oh, well, if I delete it or if I edit it, it's gone. No, Facebook has it forever. Law enforcement has likely seen it. What I say in Know Your Rights trainings is, honestly, if fear of God isn't enough to keep you from behaving online and in person, fear of the NSA should be, right? It's there, they're reading it. And we see that. We see it come up in terrorism trials where people are told or they learn that law enforcement found them and targeted them based on their social media postings. I'm not saying this to say don't post political stuff online. You should post political stuff all the time online. I think it's great. But you should be careful. You should be willing to own whatever you're going to post forever because it will follow you. When we hire people, even at CARE, we search their social media profiles. And when I forget to do it, my staff does it, right? And we're considering, what does their LinkedIn picture look like? What have they been posting about? Are their political views in conflict with the work that we're doing, or will they become a hindrance to the work? So it is forever. Take ownership of what you're doing. The third thing I'll say is to engage with others. So social media, like an in-person conversation, is not just about me talking, me talking, me talking. It is about engaging with other people. So if I'm leading an organization, I'm never ever giving a shout out to another organization. What's their reason to give a shout out to me? If I think I'm an expert, but I'm not sharing any of the work of other experts, what's their reason to ever listen to me? So it is a two-way conversation. It feels sometimes like it shouldn't be, like I just want to get somewhere and tell the whole world how mad I am, but it's not. For me to amplify, it's a two-way conversation. And then the last thing is it's important for us to break out of our bubbles, right? So talk to experts. We may think that like we're really, really great at what we're doing, but I would actually suggest that most Muslim organizations are struggling with social media, my own included. It's a lot of work. It's under-resourced. It's a specialized task. And so if you're thinking, how do I get onto Facebook and make a difference, or how do I get onto Twitter and make a difference, the best resource that I think is out there these days is Rethink Media. They do trainings in the community. They have training sheets on their website. If you want to learn how to do social media to advance a cause, listen to me for the rules and like what you should do to know your rights and protect yourself from law enforcement. But also look up Rethink Media if you really want to push it hard. I'll stop there and I look forward to the discussion.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First, I have to say that I'm really honored to be on the stage with two experts in this field. I'm not an expert in this field, but I do have some perspectives to share with you. ISNA does not rely heavily on social media. You know, we will put out statements, we'll give out updates on some of the things that we're doing, but ISNA is primarily an in-person, real-time organization, right? We organize conferences, our annual convention, we have trainings. We're a brick and mortar type of organization. So we do have a use for social media, but there are many organizations whose the bulk of their resources goes into social media, whereas for us that's not quite the case. We were discussing earlier, what to talk about, and we all agreed we were so happy that we were kids at a time before Facebook and the internet. As Zahra mentioned, be careful what you put online because it is forever, right? It is, just as you got two angels writing down all of your deeds, right? You got Facebook. Once you put something on there, it's like the angel writing it down. It's never going away.
It's worse because you can't repent.
Exactly, you can't repent. At least there's tawbah with your sins. Right? There's no tawbah with some of this stuff, right? So the other thing that I want to say is be careful that you don't get too enthralled with social media. Use social media as a tool to communicate, as a tool to organize, as a tool to inform people what you're doing. But I've seen many individuals and organizations, it's like their whole goal of social media is more social media. And is to generate more likes and more hits and more shares and so on and so forth. And you can get carried away with the social media. And don't forget that whatever it is you're doing, if you're trying to make some sort of impact on society, at the end of the day, it has to translate into something like this. It has to translate, right, into a brick and mortar type of event, an in-person, human to human type of event, type of communication. Otherwise, you're living your entire life virtually and online. So don't make this like the Matrix, right, where your entire reality is online. Use it as a tool. Use it to the extent that it's beneficial, but don't get too carried away with it. I want to take this opportunity to ask you, right? I want to just do some quick survey, because as I mentioned, ISNA, we're not heavily reliant on social media. We use it to advertise, to promote, and to inform, some of the activities that we are doing. But many of you like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and have our newsletter and so on and so forth. What is it? What else would you like to see from ISNA? Right? What service can we provide to you virtually, online, that we are not currently providing you? It can just be one sentence, one word, or if you have a brief explanation. Do you want us to issue fatawa? Are you looking for that? No, seriously, these are the types of questions that we want answered. What are you looking for from ISNA? I ask this everywhere that I go. What is it that you want from your organization? Ultimately, ISNA is your organization. So what else would you like to see from ISNA online? Anyone? Anyone have any ideas?
Current event.
What's that?
Current event.
Current events. Okay, so you want ISNA, current events within the Muslim community, or current events that we're organizing, or just generally?
Nationally.
Nationally, okay. All right. Current events, yes.
More webinars, important issues like human trafficking, drugs, gangs, serious work.
Okay.
That's really, we need resources. I run an organization, we don't have enough resources.
Yeah.
ISNA has those resources, can we engage more people and really raise solid campaigns and solid awareness and action
Okay.
items.
Webinars, okay. All right. Yes?
Training,
Training for,
general, the subjects that we're talking about.
Okay.
So people have a way of learning how to get more involved.
okay.
Even public speaking or engaging, maybe a novel program.
Okay.
General basic 101, because a lot of times when we are put in a situation where we have to speak about Islam or
Yeah.
people are frankly not knowledgeable, either misinformed or over-informed.
I see. So actually, ISNA is developing a series of trainings, but they're not going to be online. They're actually going to be in-person trainings where we have a professional come to your masjid. So we're coming out with a governance training for masajid. I mean, how many masajid have you been to where one trustee or director gets into a fight with another trustee or director and everything comes to a standstill, right? It's usually because of governance issues. So we're coming out with trainings on governance, how to have a friendly and inclusive welcoming masjid, best practices for fundraising and proper accounting of your books. I can't tell you how many masajid we've been to where their financial records are not in order, and if they were ever audited by the IRS, they would probably lose their 501c3 status very, very quickly. So these are trainings that we're coming out with, but these are going to be in-person trainings. They're not going to be online trainings.
And do you have online plans?
We can do webinars. We can, see, this goes back to the limitation of the online world. We can give you a taste, right? We can give you some basic outlines on governance, on welcoming masajid, on proper financial record keeping. But if you want to do it well, if If you want to do it well, it's going to take an in-person event like this. There is no substitute. There is no substitute for in-person communication like this. And I think that's where the limitation of these online resources really comes into play.
Sorry, do you want to add to that?
I will start it, but
Okay. Any other quick? Yes, brother.
Well, I think.
Just very briefly, if you have something.
Yes, okay. Now, based on the, thank you. Based on the presentations we have so far, there are so many challenges that are facing the Muslims now and in the future. So I think ISNA can do very well in doing more educational facilities for parents, for teachers, information about summarizing of the issues that were presented today and other for the children, and also publications for the children and youth and elderly about current issues that facing Islamophobia and how to react to them. Thank you.
Jazakallah. One last one here, and then I'll hand it back over to Mehdi.
Yeah, just to echo the brother, the issue that the brother mentioned about training us as Muslims how to talk to non-Muslims. Like for example, I have one example at work. One of my coworkers came to me and out of the blue said, "Your Quran says you have taqiyya, and whatever you do, you're just putting a face and there's something in the background that's going on." Honestly, I don't know how to respond to him, not because of lack of knowledge, but I don't know how to respond to him to make a change and impact, because I don't want to be emotional about it. I'm not trained to do that. So I never really went deep into that, but this is something that we face every time, and we want to know what's the best answer to give. Jazakumullah khair.
Mehdi,
I mean, look, these are interesting things for you to pick up on. I think there's a lot of ISNA-specific stuff, which, dare I bring it back to the subject. I mean, here's an interesting point to think about. You have a Muslim community and you have institutions everywhere in the world, wherever you go to. There are Muslim organizations doing good work, bad work, medium work. And we expect them to do everything for us. I think Brother Azeez made the good point earlier about we want everyone else to step forward rather than step forward ourselves. The whole beauty of social media, from my perspective, is it gives... it no longer gives you an excuse. It basically puts the ball back into your court. Because for far too long, you've all sat there and said to your speakers, what are you doing for us? When are you campaigning for us? When are you going to lobby this? When are you going to make a statement on this? And now you can do it yourselves. In fact, sometimes you can do it better than those organizations. You can carry out a campaign amongst students, amongst your friends, amongst your co-workers, amongst your group of friends in a particular geographical area. Ideological space, and I think that's what's important now, is that you're all self-starters and you have really no excuse. In 2013 in the UK, some of you may remember Trooper Lee Rigby, British soldier, was beheaded in the street by two guys, and it was obviously a huge story, massive terrorist attack, big backlash. The guy shouted Allahu Akbar with his knife in his hand on camera. With camera phones present, of course, social media, to broadcast it to a bigger audience. What was interesting was there was an immediate backlash by a lot of Muslims online to the media coverage and to the political coverage, saying, not in my name, they don't speak for me, these two guys, they're not from us, they're not British Muslims in our eyes, etc., etc. What I found was so interesting was, the next day I went on the BBC radio to talk about this, and the other guest was a guy called Fraser Nelson, who is the editor of The Spectator magazine, which is a right-wing magazine in the UK. So I thought it would be a kind of usual me from the left saying, don't blame Islam, and he would be saying, we need to crack down on radical Islam. But he came on and he said, you know what? He goes, I think what's really important is that British Muslims have come out overnight, remember this is the next day, have come out overnight and completely condemned this. And it's been so amazing to see British Muslims completely repudiating the language, the rhetoric. He then wrote a blog post on the Spectator website, a right-wing website which publishes a lot of stuff that Muslims do not like. And he published a piece rounding up dozens and dozens of tweets from British Muslims. And I thought to myself, there is an example. In the old days, we have the Muslim Council of Britain in the UK, the MCB, which is the big organisation that everyone loves to hate, which speaks for all 800 Muslim mosques, whatever it is. And in the old days, you would say, where's the MCB? When are they giving a press conference? When are they making a statement saying, this is not Islamic? And the point was, you didn't need to wait for a press conference. You had self-starting young people, mainly young people, condemning, explaining, repudiating, denouncing, pushing back against people who were trying to use this political gain. And I think you have that example there is an example of where actually, I'm not saying don't support Islam, the opposite. I'm just saying don't put all your eggs in an institutional basket. Don't say I just need these organizations to speak for me, work for me, campaign for me. Do it yourself. Take out your phone, take out your laptop, get off whatever else you're doing on there. And it's such an easy, lazy, we are the laziest people in the world. Allah has blessed us with lazy people technology. We don't have to do anything, it's so easy. Imagine, as Zahra said, in the old days you had to write a letter, you had to ring someone. I mean, I've been doing this, I'm old. I've been giving talks about the media for nearly 15 years now. And when I used to talk, I say, when there's a TV show you don't like, you should ring the channel and complain. And you don't need to do that anymore. You can just at the person who presented it and just, make your point. Don't troll them, don't bully them. Let me just be clear on that as somebody who's on the receiving end of daily trolling and bullying. Don't do that, but raise your concerns. Use your strength in numbers. Pose questions. Journalists, let me into a secret here. Present company excluded. Journalists are very thin-skinned people. They don't like to be criticized. And therefore, if you address them, if you pressure them, if you question them, if you try and connect with them, you can get through. So I'm not saying you're going to change the entire corporate media landscape, but what you can do is you can build relationships. I talked about earlier in my talk about the importance of building relationships. Social media allows you to connect with people you can never connect with. Even me, I'm a journalist, I interview politicians for a living. But I've connected with so many random celebrities who I never thought I would connect with, just because they're on Twitter. They once saw an article of mine and they retweeted it, or they followed me and I DM'd them. And you think, wow, you're actually connected with people you would never, in a million years, 5, 10, 15 years ago. And suddenly you're like, wow, that celebrity is a political guy. Mark Ruffalo's got a strong position on Palestine. Can you reach out to these people? Never happened 15, 20 years. You are very, very lucky people that you live in an era now where you have that access, you have that information, you are able to reach out to those people. And I think those are the kind of campaigns you need to build. And you're a campaigner. You would agree, I would think, that you can actually care. I mean, tell us what you do personally or what CARE does.
So I remembered a story when Hazem was talking. How many of you know that okay. Last Saturday, a week from yesterday, a week from today. Okay. Got it. No, that's it. My thoughts are organized.
The elections jumbled you up.
Yes, they have. So a week from today, we started to get calls from community members who had been visited by the FBI, right? So Pakistani Americans, some Afghan, said, the FBI is showing up at our door. We have to figure out how to really quickly tell as many Pakistani Americans as possible to be careful, to know their rights. We have to be worried about the right wing saying we're not cooperating with law enforcement. If a terrorist attack actually happens and we were out there telling people their rights, we're still going to continue that, but it's sensitive. And so we're not going to do a press release. And there is no time for Know Your Rights workshops in every community. I was just thinking that even the nature of webinars has changed. We had 2 executive directors, Hassan Shibli in Florida and Ali Salam in Texas, who I think just turned on Facebook Live while they were driving and started ranting about how obnoxious it was that the FBI was visiting community members.
Obviously that's not a safe thing to do on a Saturday.
Well, I mean, maybe they were parked, they weren't texting and driving. No comment. I plead the fifth on behalf of them. But they just on their phones, wherever they were, just Facebook Lived. Hey, if you're in the Muslim community, know that this is happening. In 3 days, over 100 visits were reported. That is more than we usually see in a month across the country that get reported, but 3 days. And the questions were absurd. Do you know anyone from Al-Qaeda? Do you know anyone who wants to send money to Al-Qaeda? Do you know anyone that wants to harm the United States? Our answer is always, of course, if I knew that, I would have told you already, but you showing up at my house isn't going to make me want to cooperate with you. Why are you treating me like a suspect? I share this story to say that we didn't do a press release, so we didn't go the traditional route. We didn't do boots on the ground, which I agree is a really good way to do Know Your Rights trainings. We went to Facebook Live. There were people in my community across the country who were like, who is this person, Ali Salam from Texas? What do I need to know about my rights? People who are in the masajid that I go to on a weekly basis, who have skipped the Know Your Rights workshops, and these viral Facebook Live videos were how we got the word out. So it's good for the external, for connecting with people who I might never be able to reach, but it's also really good for the internal at times. and is easy, convenient, cheap. Like all of you have a cell phone, you don't even need like GoToWebinar for it. You just need Facebook or Twitter. It's also, sorry, the other thing I remember is all of this conversation around Black Lives Matter. I think I'm the youngest person on this panel, but I'm still getting old.
To rub it in.
As long as I'm younger, I will. But I grew up in LA, which I will. Anyways, so I grew up in LA when the Rodney King beating happened, right? And I remember what that was like in the environment around that time. And it wasn't that it was the first time a police officer had brutally beaten a black man. It was that camcorders were around and someone recorded it. Today, it's not that police are killing black people more than they used to. It's that we have our cell phones. Like every single one of us can reach a celebrity, can spread the word in our community, but might also be able to save someone's life through the use of social media. The question I ask myself when I pass a police interaction is where I need to go more important than my ability to Facebook Live this and hope that I'm a witness if, God forbid, something were to happen? So it's also a safety tool in ways, is that your ability to use another app, so Facebook, Twitter, but if you just want a recording app, ACLU has a great app called Mobile Justice, where the video uploads directly to ACLU's secure servers so that if your phone is destroyed in the process, your social media isn't locked out. Facebook and Instagram don't take the video down, which they have done at times, right? And you may have saved someone's life, or at least been a witness to the fact.
Okay. Do you want to add to that?
No.
I'm going to throw it up for questions or comments or discussions. Do you want to share some insights?
I'd like to add
Do you want to wait for the microphones coming your way?
Thank you. In response to what ISNA can do, it occurred to me two things of making awareness among the Muslims and non-Muslims. Two things. One, about the demographics of Muslims in USA. All aspects of demography. I don't have to go into details.
Okay.
Second one is to write down the success stories of doctors, engineers, academicians, teachers, institutions that have been successfully achieving progress to America. I mean, one of them is one I'm working with, Arab Student Aid International. We bring students here, give them interest-free loans, and to get experience and technology and transfer technology to their home countries. Now, this is an achievement. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. So this kind of success stories is good to have them circulated. Thank you.
I mean, one of the things I would say, talking of success stories, what's interesting and something maybe you guys in organizational capacities can think about doing is showing a lot of the young people here in particular that, you know, let's be honest, a lot of young people say, I want to grow up, I want to be a basketballer, I want to be a TV star, I want to be famous. I want my 15 minutes of fame. And what's interesting about social media is, on a non-entertainment level, on a political, activist, even religious community level, there have been so many young Muslim Americans who have built a profile for themselves online, who have done such good work. There are people, I'm not going to start naming names, but there are people who you know who have appeared on TV, panel discussions, have had magazine profiles done of them, simply based on the fact that their activism online, simply because they've been tweeting interesting things, writing interesting things, grabbing the attention of people in the legacy media institutions. And that is a real opportunity, something to think about doing, either collectively or individually. How do you build up that profile? How do you build up that network? And also, how do you attract attention to the causes you care about? I mean, all I hear about from people is, why doesn't the media cover this? Why doesn't the media cover that? We all know why they don't cover certain issues. The issue is, what are we going to do about it? I'll give you an example on my own show. I do a weekly show on Al Jazeera English called Upfront. And we cover lots of different issues, but even then people are always complaining that you haven't covered their specific issue, because apparently you have to cover all the issues in the world every week. That's just my own grudge, but lots of people say you haven't covered this, you haven't covered that. But what's interesting, for example, we did a show on the Oromo struggle in Ethiopia, which many people don't know about. A lot of online, the Oromo community is massive, especially in the US. And they gave it a lot of publicity, and that was brought to us by people tweeting at us, Facebook at us. The Kashmir issue, which we haven't covered at all properly on my show for various reasons. embarrassingly. A lot of people raise that. People tweet at me, tweet at my producers, saying, why haven't you done what's going on in Kashmir? Why aren't you covering what's happening in the valley, etc., etc. That is important. As Zahra said, you can easily get through to people through social media. When you sit at home and say, why hasn't someone covered this? Why hasn't someone covered that? Yes, there are problems with mainstream media, but what are you going to do about it to try and draw their attention? It's not always some weird conspiracy against Muslims. I know we want to believe that they just want to kill us all and destroy us all. No, sometimes it's just incompetence, ignorance, lack of information, lack of awareness. There's a lot of good people out there doing good work, and they just don't know about the cause you care about. And if you can get their eyeballs on it, maybe they will cover it. And there are so many good examples of that.
Actually, I wanted to add on, you mentioned that many Muslims have made a name for themselves by tweeting interesting things or interesting insights. You have to have the content, right? You have to have the content, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier. You know, these media platforms are a way to communicate, to organize, or to bring attention, but they're never a substitute for content, for good substance. What you have to say has to be insightful, it has to be factual, it has to be accurate, right? So you still have to do your homework. You got to know what you're talking about, and then social media.
Non-hateful.
And hopefully non-hateful, yes, thank you. So you still have to do your homework, you have to know what you're talking about, and then you go from there.
I was going to say, so we do spend a lot of energy as a community, even the three of us, saying like, hey, if you want to get something done, use social media. If you want to critique something, use social media. It's also a great way to thank people, right? So a lot of our allies and friends in the media will say, hey, when I did a positive story about Muslims, I got so much trolling, so much hate. Like, have your people send some positive stuff my way so I can show that to my producers. Particularly for, these are people who are maybe first time covering a good story in the Muslim community, and all of a sudden they're bombarded. We've had Muslim friends in the media say that their not Muslim friends in the media are horrified at what they see, right? So it's like Mehdi's friend who isn't Muslim says to him, oh my gosh, I wouldn't have done this story had I known that it would have invited so much hate. And so use it to critique, use it to ask for better coverage, but also use it to thank people, right? To just send a note of thanks. We're reminded as Muslims that we must be grateful. And so let's do that. Let's use social media to say thank you sometimes. Thank ISNA too for this conference. Drive followers to them.
We got this gentleman here in the second row, and then the gentleman at the back.
Assalamu alaikum. I have a quick question. I'm actually a student. I discussed this with the sister before. Okay, because this masjid is like a community center for us to come to if we have any issues regarding, for example, we have a free clinic if anybody has any type of problem. ISNA as a nationally thing, is it possible where professionals can come together maybe in the future, or are you guys doing something like that where professionals like teachers or doctors or engineers, they can come together where they can discuss, whether even lawyers, if students or other individuals have some type of problem or issues or questions, they can actually go to ISNA and ask these type of questions. Thank you.
So a quick answer, yes, to some of your questions. We do get professionals together, educators. So we have our education forum. This is one of our most successful and larger conferences for administrators and educators in Islamic schools. And we actually have experts come and talk, they have policy papers, they do all sorts of things. We have one in LA in January, and then we have one, the larger one, in Chicago in April. We don't provide that same kind of service for other professionals just because we don't have that capacity.
Is that available nationally or just for state to state?
We do, so one of the strengths that ISNA has is the power to convene, to bring people together. We do it at our conferences and we do it at our large annual convention. So we started a young professionals track to bring youngsters in various industries and get them together and try to network. We bring experts in different fields and they have sessions. You can discuss issues with them afterwards. But to do what we do in the field of education, to do it in every profession, that's a lot of work, man. We got to make some big donations this night if you want us to do that.
So, we are like non-Muslims, victims of the good and the bad of social media. What can help us differentiate rumors
Yes, good
from
question.
facts?
Good question.
What are the tools that can help us? Because that's crucial.
Good question. In fact, you read my mind now. I was going to say, before this session finished, someone needs to make the point that, you know, social media is a very, very powerful tool for getting stuff done. It's a very good way of communicating. Hazem made the point about when you make your comments, post your stuff, make sure it's fact-filled. The reverse side of that is when you're reading stuff online, please check what you're reading online, because one of the upsides of social media is, as I said, it's brought us all together, it's allowed us to get a voice that we didn't have before, it's allowed us to mobilize, but there's a big downside in that it's created silos in which people are just reading and sharing A, one-sided information, B, false information. There was a report done, I don't know if any of you saw it, by BuzzFeed during the election campaign, that something like 30% of the Facebook posts on politics, on the election, that people were reading were completely fake. They were being written by some guy sitting in a village in Macedonia who are paid for by businessmen here to make money. It's an easy way of making money from advertising online. And they're posting stuff for right-wingers, they're posting stuff saying, you know, Hillary Clinton's about to go to jail, and people are sharing it based on nothing, fake sources, fake rumors. For left-wing people, it's stuff about, you know, Bernie Sanders is about to murder Hillary Clinton, or whatever it is, nonsensical stories. And on a Muslim level, we get that all the time. I mean, now we live in an age where we're all on WhatsApp. Put your hands up if you've received a video on WhatsApp from someone about something, a geopolitical event, or a war in the last month or 2 months. If somebody sent you like a video or a picture, look at this horrific thing. It happens all the time. We don't know the source. We don't know when it was taken. We don't know where it was taken. And then we just share it blindly with every other 10 groups that we're on. Please do your basic, let me say to the journalists, do the basic fact checking, because we cannot afford, we're already a community that's been marginalized, we're already a community that has conspiracy theory tendencies, let's be very honest about that. Let's not use social media to spread more misinformation from dodgy places. When people send you stuff, who wrote it, where did they write it? If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Google it, it'll probably be on smokes.com if it is an urban legend or a complete internet legend. So I would urge you all in this current climate, especially now with the political climate you're in, yes, take action, yes, get educated, yes, get yourself worked up, but don't just share stuff blindly, because it will undermine us in the end. If we start sharing stuff that's not true, no one will take us seriously when we're sharing stuff that is true. It's like the boy who cried wolf.
So Mehdi, actually, if I can follow up with a question for you as someone who's in that industry. So as you mentioned, social media can be a great way to inform or to misinform people, right? It's a double-edged sword. Many people are surprised to know that Muslims account for less than 5% of terrorism in the United States. Less than 5%. If you were to ask the typical American on the street, what percentage of terrorism is committed by Muslims, they'd probably say 95%, right? Whereas it's the exact opposite. Now, how is it that statistics like this, which are readily available, you know, you can look this stuff up, right? The FBI, many credible news sources. Why is it that despite the fact that we have 24/7 news channels, that we have access to news on our phones, on our internet, you've got credible or somewhat credible online journalism sites like Huffington Post or CNN.com and so on and so forth. Why is it that there is so much misinformation despite the fact of readily available correct information?
Wow, we've got time to start a new 1-hour panel on that subject.
No, not a 1 hour.
That's a good question. I think the short answer is because the 5% statistic doesn't sell and the 95% statistic does sell. We live in an age where there is a ready market, not just a ready audience, for certain types of stories about certain types of communities. You know, Islamophobia is not some organic, spontaneous, knee-jerk, natural uprising. It's not the natural state of things. It is a deliberately fanned, inflamed, funded project, and the people doing it are much better at lobbying and organising and persuading journalists to cover certain stories than we are or their opponents are of doing the opposite.
But I mean, surely one person, at least one person at Fox News, or for Megyn Kelly's show, or for the Bill O'Reilly show, surely somebody involved in the creation of
Fox News is not a good example because, of course, they're pushing a specific agenda and a narrative. I mean, if you take the BBC, for example, let's not take Al Jazeera, let's not take Fox, let's take the BBC, which used to be the gold standard of impartial journalism in the world. I mean, the BBC, I'm sure if you go on the BBC website, you'll find at least a few stories, if you Google, mentioning the system you mentioned. The point is, why isn't it more widely rated? Because I say it doesn't fit the geopolitical context, it doesn't fit the financial context, it doesn't fit the lobbying context. The bigger issue is, what are we going to do about it how do you get that statistic out there about the terrorism? And one thing we haven't talked about, and we've run out of time, we're running out of time now, is I think humour is very important. One of the ways to win on social media is humour. Where Muslims have done really well, and I said this in the talk earlier as well, we have statistics and facts and figures coming out of our ears, but that doesn't really win any arguments for us, sadly. It doesn't get us any credibility. What has worked is when you kind of think outside the box, when you do use humour, for example. So many of you in this room will know some of the great memes and hashtag campaigns from this election when Trump said Muslims don't report stuff. Some of you may have seen the hashtag that went viral where Muslims started reporting everything, including the man on stage who was about to assault an innocent woman to his left. So, this is the kind of stuff we need to be doing more of. I don't know how many of you follow Hind Amri, Libya Liberty, who is basically, she calls herself, I'm a Libyan American housewife sitting in the Gulf. And, every journalist in DC follows her, they retweet her, they share her stuff, they interview her, because she's hilarious. Her tweets are sarcastic, they're sardonic, they're hilarious, they're apt. That is the way. And we talk a lot about facts and figures and political organising, all important. But we also need to think outside the box in terms of memes, campaigns, humour. That is how you build relations with people. That is how you get people's attention. People who don't necessarily disagree with it, don't necessarily agree with you either. And I think we do need to do much more of that in order to kind of winning over people, winning over communities. But you're right, the bigger issue is much, much harder. We're running out of time. This lady here wants to ask a question.
Increasingly, social media sort of presents a way that users,
I'll repeat it. Sorry, carry on.
users only see the posts and articles that they already agree with their own views. So how do we overcome that obstacle? Are we even really reaching out to people who think differently than we do and we're posting and tweeting? Or is it just venting to people who already...
No, it's a very good question. I don't think there's an easy answer. I don't know if you guys have an answer to that question. There's no doubt that we are in silos, as I mentioned earlier. Even in political terms, right and left aren't talking to each other. People in Britain woke up, liberals woke up the day after Brexit referendum and said, but how could anyone vote for Brexit? I didn't see anyone on my Facebook say they support Brexit, because you weren't talking to the people who supported Brexit. And the issue then becomes, how do you break out those silos? I don't have an easy answer to that question. If anyone has any suggestions about how do you reach out across the divides on social media?
So one, it's resources, right? Like the ability to pay for promoted content, even on social media, will get you further. And the second is it's actually, it's channel-specific or medium-specific skills. On Twitter, classic mistake that Muslims make is we write our own hashtag. So we miss out on engaging with whatever the primary hashtag is for whatever event we're commenting on, right? But that's a Twitter-specific strategy. It might not work on Facebook because they have different algorithms. And so when I think of why Muslim organizations and even Muslim youth are struggling with this, it's because we need really intentional and intense training on the tools. We have to be aware of the fact that it's not my expertise anymore. I've kind of outgrown it. I'm young, but not that young. And so I know how to do Twitter. Do I know how to do Snapchat? No. So it really is channel or medium specific so that we're doing it right.
There's also Hazem mentioned about how the etiquette of doing it as well. There is a serious issue whereby we go online, we're able to connect with people. I mentioned earlier, it gives you an amazing opportunity to connect with people you would never normally connect with, people you wouldn't meet in your local mosque, supermarket, university, workplace. But the problem is, what do? What I've noticed a lot of Muslims do is we use it in order basically just to moan, whine, bash, complain, attack, troll, abuse, bully. So for example, I mentioned earlier about journalists. It happens. I'm not just because I'm on the receiving end. If I'm fine with it, I can deal with it. I'm talking about people who are, for example, a right-wing journalist or commentator. You see him on Twitter. He says something you don't like. What's your first reaction? Is it to mock and ridicule him? Maybe. Is it to message him and say, oh, you're an Islamophobe racist? Or is it actually to engage? As I said earlier, some of these people are nasty pieces of work. Some aren't. Some are just ignorant. It's come back to the talk I made earlier. Some have never met a Muslim, never dealt with a Muslim, never had any interaction with a real life Muslim. Now social media is giving you that opportunity. How are you going to treat it? Are you going to take a prophetic path? Are you going to try and engage and win them over? 9 times out of 10 you might fail. But on that one chance you get through to the editor of some magazine or some political editor, he thinks, wow, that Muslim's not like all the other evil Muslims I know, but I'm going to remember him, I'm not going to block him, and actually I'm going to take on board what he said. Next time I write my piece, yeah, maybe I should consider that point you made when I conclude. Maybe I shouldn't have used that photograph that wasn't the right photograph to use for it. You never know who you're going to get through to. Why turn off everyone by immediately always being hostile on Facebook or Twitter or whatever other platform you're using? Let's just rethink how we're engaging with other people. And you know, the good old Kantian axiom, treat other people as you would like to be treated yourself.
And be funny.
And be funny. Humour will help too. Well, we have time for one last. We'll take one last one. I don't even know what the time is. I'm just making them up. But let's just carry on. Let's carry on until it chuckers off.
So I really like what you've been saying about using Twitter and social media to get into contact with and get the attention of public figures. But I just wanted to add something, and I don't know if any of you have time to speak to your experience on this, but from the legislative side of things, so as someone who has worked in the Ohio House of Representatives and heard stories from Capitol Hill staffers, the way to reach out to them and get things done there is still definitely letter writing and calling them and showing up, because that way they cannot ignore you, whereas on social media they absolutely can. So just the kind of idea that social media can supplement these things, but it cannot supplant them for change. I don't know if any of you would want to speak to that.
I think we agree.
Yeah.
We agree. It can, exactly what you said. I don't have anything to
It's not even just supplement. Couldn't you argue that, I mean, I'm just throwing this out there, couldn't you argue that even the old-fashioned ways of reaching your representative or your congressman would be more effective if you were sharing them? So if there is a phone number, let's say ringing the congressman's office is the best way to show you oppose or support some bill, the best way to get people to ring that number is to put that phone number on your Facebook page. So it's not mutually exclusive. In fact, one reinforces the other. But you're right, we shouldn't just abandon old techniques. And also, of course, no one's used the word here, but, you know, clicktivism, which is a phrase you sometimes hear, that we now live in an age where if you want to be an activist, you just think, oh, well, I shared a post about Palestine. Wow, I'm so pro-Palestinian. I've done my bit for the people of Gaza. No, you haven't. You've done the bare minimum, you lazy person. That is the issue, that we shouldn't go down that road where we just think social media is a substitute for all other organising strategies, all other political strategies, all other humanitarian strategies, where we're just clicking on things, sharing things, but we're not actually pulling money out of our pockets, we're not actually turning up to a rally, we're not actually ringing the congressman's office. I think that's very important, that you have to mix all these things together and not just be lazy, even though it is a lazy person's tool, as I said earlier.
And hey, you spoke with a British accent, so it's, right? No, but actually, I mean, that's a very good point. So an example that immediately comes to my mind, the Arab Spring. So I was born in Cairo, Egypt, and you all know in Tahrir Square, in Freedom Square, where, you know, the revolution began in Egypt, in Tahrir Square, and that was organized using Facebook, as I recall, right? Wa'il Ghunim organized this thing. He had no idea what was going to happen, but he organized it and he communicated. But the reason it worked wasn't because of Facebook. It worked because people showed up by the millions, right? And they didn't leave, and they insisted on change. They insisted on their rights. So it goes back to what I think all of us have been saying, and what all of us agree with. Online activism is no substitute for the real work that has to take place on the ground. It's a good way to advertise, to communicate, and to organize. But beyond that.
But also don't forget that without social media, your next president wouldn't be president. So that's the power of social media. How's that for a last thought? A depressing, dark thought. No, to an uplifting discussion. Let's give a big round of applause to our panelists for taking time out to
Give a round of applause for another one.
And also to the volunteers and to ISNA for setting up events like this. And may they make many more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.